See, object repository. From the beginning, object repository. See, already I told repository is general term, global term. You can find this term in manual testing also. Repository means a storage place. Object repository, it is a storage place for storing objects information. What type of objects? See, generally in our UFT test automation, we work with 4 types of objects: runtime objects, test objects, utility objects, and automation objects. This repository for storing test objects. See, it is a storage place to store test objects information. See, if it is object repository based test, this object repository is the middle layer in between test and AUT. Next, object repository, 2 types. See, 2 types of object repository. In UFT. See, test the execution process. Test execution process. Test or test script. Test or test script. Next, object or repository. Next, AUT. See here, in test or test script, steps are statements, or you can say instructions. In object repository, objects information, local or shared. Local or shared objects information. Next, on AUT, execution. See, test provides instructions. UFT gets objects information from object repository. Based on that information, performs operations on AUT. Next, types of objects in repository. In UFT, we have 2 types of repositories. One is local repository. Local repository. It is internal file. Internal file. Already we discussed UFT is one-tier application, or you can say standalone application. It doesn't have any database. It stores its resources using file format on hard disk. See, in UFT, every resource is file. Shared object repository files, function library files, environment variable files, recovery scenario files, test batch files, etc. See, Internal file. What is internal file? Internal file. UFT creates and stores internal files. UFT creates and maintains internal file. We no need to maintain. User no need to maintain. If it is external file, user has to create and maintain. See, what is local repository? Can you tell me what is local repository? In the last class I explained already. What is local repository?
Local repository can be shared for only one action.
Here no sharing concept first of all. See, local repository.
It's a storage place to store test object information.
That is general definition. What is local repository? See, this is general. It is a storage place for storing test objects information. It is a storage place for storing test objects information. That is general. What is local repository? See, object repository two types, local and shared. Say, UFT creates a local repository for every action during recording. UFT creates. See, UFT, it is action level, not local repository, action level, not test level. Suppose in our test only one action, one local repository, 10 actions, 10 local repositories. UFT creates a local repository for every action during recording. Suppose if we use another methods for test design, keyword driven methodology or descriptive programming, UFT won't create any local repositories. See, UFT creates a local repository for every action during recording. Next, local repository files. Local repository files will be saved along with the test or test script. Whenever you save test, these files will be saved along with the test. Will be saved along with the test. See, it is action level. Next, already I told it is internal file. UFT only creates and maintains internal files, but user can edit local objects. User or tester can edit local objects. Edit in the sense, add some more objects, next rename objects, next delete objects. Next, another type, shared object repositories. See, shared object repository is external file. It is external file. User has to create and maintain. Extension is .tsr. First I will show how to create a local repository. We no need to create, UFT will create during recording. See, take new test, Otherwise, see resources, object repository, menu blank, menu disabled state. First, take new test. Just a minute. Take new test. Next, launch object repository, resources, object repository. See blank, only headings. Here test objects. It is new test. Record. See, activate the dialog box. Enter agent name. Enter password. Click OK button. Stop. Launch object repository, resources, object repository. See, 4 objects information added. Suppose in our test 2 actions. Suppose first action, for identification purpose, I am renaming this action. Suppose this action is login. Next, create one more action, design call to new action. Action name, open order. Next, record. Check order number checkbox, enter order number, click OK button. Close the window, stop recording. Run the script. It will execute as per test flow. Here test flow, first login, then open order. Run the script. Over. Now how many actions in this test? 2 actions. How many repositories? How many local repositories?
2.
2 local repositories.
2 repository.
Launch object repository. Next, observe. Login. These are login repository objects. Next, open order. Open order objects. See, this is a brief introduction about local repository. Next, shared object repository. See, in 2 ways we can create shared object repositories, either by adding objects or by exporting local objects. See, user creates shared object repositories either by adding objects or by exporting local objects. See, both are useful features. First I will show adding objects, and I already told it is external file. Extension is TSR. It is external file. User means tester. Tester has to create and maintain these files. See, shared object repository files. Files are external files. Next, user can edit shared objects. User can edit shared objects. Next, creating shared object repository. Say, suppose I want to create shared object repository for this login dialog. Go to resources menu, object repository manager, object, add objects. Otherwise, here add objects icon is there. Object, add objects, show the dialog box or window or web page. Click OK. Here select required option. Select required option. See, I will explain options later. First, general navigation. Select required option and click OK. See, objects information added. Save. It is external file. We need to save. Save shared object repository. Suppose I want to save on desktop. Name, login, extension TSR. Close object repository manager. Observe. File created na with the name of login, login TSR, login.tsr. See, just guide me how to create shared object repository. Guide me.
Resources.
Resources.
Object repository manager.
Object repository manager.
And click on add objects from
add objects from this toolbar. Add objects icon from toolbar. Otherwise, object menu, add objects. Next, show the dialog box or window or web page. Click OK. Select filter option. Click OK. Objects information added. Save.
Save.
Enter the file name. Suppose login. Enter any meaningful file name. Click OK. Close object repository manager. Close object repository manager. Okay. Say, just observe the navigation. Add objects. This is for add objects. First, open the dialog box or window or web page. Required thing. This is from application. It is from AUT. It is from AUT. Next, select, put mute, select resources menu, resources menu. Next, object repository, object repository manager. Next, object menu. See, observe. Resources, Object Repository Manager, Object Menu, Add Objects. Add Objects item. Next, show the dialog box or window, web page, whatever it might be. Next, select option. Next, click OK button. Next, save the repository with TSR extension. See, this is about this one. Another possibility is there. This is one possibility. Add objects. Next, another possibility, export local objects. Export local objects. By exporting local object, see, first I will explain navigation. Launch local object repository. Launch local object repository. Say resources object repository. Suppose I want to export this login. Launch object repository. Next, file menu, export local objects. Enter name, suppose ABCD. Create. Close local object repository. See. File menu, export local objects, enter file name, next create. Okay, na? Two ways of creating shared object repositories.
Yes, sir.
Next, one topic, a real-time topic, when to choose add objects feature, when to choose exporting local objects. See, exporting local objects, this is just a bonus feature. Generally, we use add objects feature. This is only bonus feature, additional feature. Sometimes you can use that feature. Suppose, when to choose add objects feature and when local objects feature. Export local objects. Say, suppose in our dialog box or window or web page, a small amount of objects available, that time choose add objects feature. Suppose in your web page or window, hundreds of objects available, huge amount of objects, but you want to store only few objects. Suppose out of 700 objects, I want to store 10 objects. That time record that navigation and export local objects. Suppose I will show one small example. www.dealsdirect.com.au. See, Australian web e-commerce portal. See, in this home page, so many links, images and others. Hundreds of objects available, hundreds of objects. But I want to perform here customer registration operation and a login operation. See, register some objects, login some objects. I want only 10 objects. Here hundreds of objects. That time just record that navigation, export local objects. Understand the concept? Tell me when to choose add objects feature.
When there are many objects and you don't want all the
objects. Just to add objects. Don't confuse. When there are small when
small
and there are a small amount of objects, a few objects available in a window or a web page, use add objects feature to create shared repositories. Suppose when to choose exporting local objects.
When there are 100 amounts of objects and you want only few.
Yes. Suppose when there are hundreds of objects, but we want to store a few objects. That time choose.
Is that you have to choose? Export to local when there are only few objects?
Yes, you can choose, no problem, no issue. Suppose only few objects, you don't want to add objects, by exporting local objects you want to create, yes, you can create. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can use. See, already I told, this is just a bonus feature.
Oh, okay.
Just a minute. See the navigation. Resources, object repository. Here select repository. File, export local objects. Next enter name, suppose ABCD. Create. Close object repository. Say, suppose in our window or web page 20-30 objects only available. We want to store all objects. That time use the add objects feature. Suppose another scenario, in our web page hundreds of objects available, but we want to store only 10 to 20 objects. That time just record that navigation and export. But no issues, no limitations. You can use the add object features for all scenarios, no issue. And one more thing, here I want to explain. options, some options available in shared in add objects feature. See, resources, object repository manager, object, add objects, click show the dialog box or window or web page, click OK. Here 4 options available. Here 4 options. First option, selected object. See, select the filter. See. Here I told na, select the filter. Here I will explain filters. Select the filter. Here 4 options. One is, what is the first one? Selected object only. Selected object only. If we select this option, what will happen? See, UFT will store selected object only. No child objects. No child objects. Observe. Click OK. How many objects stored? Only parent na?
Yes, sir.
Next, file menu, new, object, add objects. Just a minute. Object, add objects, show the dialog box, click OK. Select second option, default object types. Then it will store all default objects which have functionality. See, click OK. 1 parent and 5 child objects. Next, object, add object, show the dialog, click OK. Select third option. All object types means it stores all objects including static objects. Static objects which don't have functionality. Example, messages, functionality less images, etc. Click OK. See, in this dialog, this flight image is static object, no functionality. See. See, agent name, just message type. Next, last option, object, add objects, show the dialog box, click OK. Selected object types. If you select this option, again you have to select class of objects. Suppose I want to store only buttons from any window or web page, only buttons or only edit boxes or more than one class. Suppose I want to store buttons and links from a web page. Yes, you can select. Selected object types. Here we have to select class of object. Select. From this dialog, I want to store only buttons. Select button class. Click OK. Again click OK. See, it stored only buttons. Dialog, login dialog, that is parent mandatory. Getting this last option.
Yes, sir.
Just guide me from this flight reservation window. Observe this window. Just a minute. Take new. From this flight reservation window, I want to store only buttons and radio buttons. Guide me.
Okay.
I want to store only buttons and radio buttons. Guide me.
Oh, okay. Add objects.
Object, add object, show the window, click OK, select fourth option, again select, here select class
Buttons and radio
button class and radio button
Radio
class.
class.
Click
And
OK,
click okay.
again click OK. Observe. It stored nearly 10 buttons and 3 radio buttons. 10
Buttons.
push buttons, 3 radio buttons. Parent, flight reservation window, parent mandatory. Okay. Observe the filter options. See, first one, selected object only. Only parent, no childs. Second one, default objects. Default objects. Default objects means all objects which are having functionality. Which are having functionality. Next, all objects. All objects including static objects. Next, fourth one, what is the fourth option? Selected object type na? Selected object types. Here it stores selected object only. Selected class of objects. Selected class of objects only. But user can select one or more classes. User can select one or more classes. Okay na? All options?
Yes, sir.
Any query?
No queries.
Observe. Difference between default objects and static objects. Say, in this dialog box, see, pop-up dialog, which one is default object? Which are default objects? This dialog box also default now. We can close this one now.
Yes.
Next, what about OK button?
Okay is also default.
Also default button. Next, what about this message? Please enter agent name. Any
That is also
functionality?
default. Yeah.
Not default. It doesn't have any functionality.
Okay.
It is comes under static object. Just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Just a minute. File, new, object, add object, show the dialog. See, here it stored 2 dialogues. Why? This first login dialog is parent for this flight reservations dialog. Okay. In this, I am selecting default object types. Okay, here flight reservation dialog and OK button only. Next, object, add object, all object types. It stored this message also na. This image also na. No functionality. Okay. Find the difference between these two, default object and all objects.
Yes.
What is the difference?
Yes.
What is the difference?
Default objects, all objects may be static.
Just a minute.
Default.
Just a minute. Don't confuse. See, find add object. See, first option. If you select first option, selected object only, then it will store only selected object, no child objects, only parent object. Suppose if you select default object types, then it will store all default objects from that parent. Default objects, objects which are having functionality. Next, all object types. If you select all object types, then it will store all objects including static object. Static object means objects which are not having any functionality. Example, messages, etc. Next, last one, selected object types. If you select last option, again we have to select class of the object. Then it will store only those classes, one or more. Suppose I want to store only buttons. You can select button class. I want to store only radio buttons. You can store. I want to store edit boxes and buttons. You can select one or more options. Okay, na? All options.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got
Okay,
it.
cool. See, so far we discussed what is object repository, what is shared repository, how to create a shared repository by adding objects and by exporting local objects. Next, important one, operations. Operations on object repository. Operations on object repository. See here, I will explain 10 important operations. 10 important operations. Most of the time we use 5 or 6 operations only. I will introduce 10 important operations. Concentrate. First one, add objects. Add objects. We can add objects to local and shared also. For adding objects to local optional, generally UFT adds objects during recording, but facility is there. Next, rename objects. We can rename local objects and shared objects. Next, delete objects. We can delete local objects and shared objects. Next, export local objects. Next, merge repositories. See here, no restrictions, no limitations, and no recommendations from vendor. Some companies maintain small size repositories. Some companies maintain large size repositories. Both are having advantages as well as disadvantages. Suppose in your project you created 200 small size repositories. Disadvantage is maintenance difficult. Advantage is if it is small test, associate small repositories, then test performance will be increased. Next, large size repositories. Suppose for your entire project you created only 2 or 3 repositories. Advantage is maintenance easy. Disadvantage, test execution performance will be reduced. Suppose for one small test, if you associate large size repository, test execution performance will be reduced. See, once here we can merge 2 repositories at a time. Suppose I want to merge 4 to 1. I have four small size repositories. Merge them as one. How to merge? I want 4 small size repositories. I want to merge them as one repository. But UFT can merge 2 at a time. Then how to merge 4 to 1? See, first to take 2 repositories and merge them.
2 repository.
Merge, and second time take another 2 repositories and merge, and third time merge last 2 repositories. Like that you can merge.
Yes.
Next, associate. Okay, first I will index, then I will explain with practical. Associate shared object or repositories. Associate shared object repositories. For this, alternate is there. Without associating, you can load shared object repository during execution. At runtime. See. Next, export test objects to XML. What is the purpose? I will explain. Next, combined feature, import test objects from XML. Next, map objects in between object repository and AUT, application under test. Next, define new test objects. Define new test objects. See, these are the important features in object repository. Define new test objects. See, first add objects to local repository. Say just from scratch. Say first I am taking one new test. Launch object repository, blank. Next, record the navigation. activate the dialog, enter agent name, any 4-digit value, enter password, Mercury, click OK button. Stop. Resources, object repository. 4 objects added. We operated only those 4 objects. Say, in case of local repositories, user interaction is optional. UFT adds objects during recording automatically. Suppose I want to add some more objects. Yes, we can add. We can edit. Resources, object repository. It is local repository. Observe. Here no cancel button na. I want to add cancel button to this local repository. Future purpose. Getting my requirement?
Yes.
During record, any confusion? During recording, I operated 4 objects. UFT stored those 4 objects information. But I want to add one more object to local repository. That is my requirement. Any confusion?
No confusion.
Okay. See how to add. First launch local object repository. Object. Add objects to local. Show the object. I want to add this cancel button. Click OK. See cancel button added. No need to save. Here no save option. If you save the test script, local repositories will be saved automatically. Auto save. Observe. Tell me the navigation. How to add objects to local repository. Add objects.
Resources.
Just a minute. Add objects to local.
Resources.
Resources.
Object repository.
Yes, object repository. Object repository.
And add objects.
Object menu. Otherwise, you can select that icon. This time, add objects. Add objects to local. Next, show the object. Okay. Next, no save. Next, add objects to shared. Suppose already suppose first create shared repository. Resources, object repository manager, object, add objects, show the dialog box, click OK, select required option, again click OK, save, login dot TSR default extension, OK, close. See in this login TSR created, I want to add this dialog box also to that existing shared repository. Yes, you can add. First open shared object repository, resources, object repository manager, file, open, browse path of the file, click OK, object, see this menu items in disabled state. Why? Limited protection. Go to file menu, enable editing, next object, add objects, show the dialog, click OK. I want to store this parent only, click OK. See another dialog stored. Okay na?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Tell me the navigation. Add objects to shared. This time shared. Add objects to shared.
Resources.
Resources menu, object repository, manager. This time manager. Find this one. Manager. Next. Object. Add objects. Object. Add objects. Next.
File editing.
First step. This one. File. Enable
editing.
Enable editing. Next.
And then add. Show the
just
object.
Just a minute. First, this navigation. Getting? After launching Object Repository Manager, first go to File menu. First we have to browse that. This one, suppose
File.
new.
File. Yeah. Open.
First file open. First file open, browse path of the file. That is first step. See, file open. Next, browse path of the file, shared object repository file. This is one navigation. Next, continuation. Now go to file menu. Next, enable editing. After that, third step. What is the third step? Object. Add objects. Object. Add objects. Next, show the object. Okay. Next, save required. It is external file. Save. Next, close Object Repository Manager. Okay, na? See, same way, rename objects. We can rename local objects as well as shared objects. See, sometimes renaming required. When renaming is required, that I will explain in 7th topic. Now just know the concept, how to rename. Just a minute. See, local repository. In this local repository, some objects information available. I want to rename OK button. I want to rename OK button as monkey. How to rename? Say resources, object repository, select OK button and right click, rename, suppose monkey. See, it is a local repository. See, observe script. In the script also saved na, change it na.
Yes, sir.
Observe. If I execute this script, what will happen? Will it execute or not? No monkey button in this login dialog. Will it execute or not?
It will.
How? No monkey button. How to recognize monkey button? Will it execute or show error?
It will execute.
How?
Because that is already saved. That is just the name.
Say here monkey, resources, object repository. Here also monkey. How can it will execute? How it will execute? Okay.
It won't.
It will execute. It will execute. Run the script. Executing. How? Observe. See, we changed that external name only, but internal name same. See, object repository. Here observe properties. What is the internal name? Okay na? So it will.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Suppose
Yes.
if you change here internal name, then it won't execute. It won't. This time it won't execute. See, identification purpose, we change external name only. See, it won't execute after 20 seconds. It will show error. No monkey button.
Yes.
After 20 seconds. That is a UFT tool default synchronization time. See, cannot identify the object monkey. See, resources, object repository. This time it will execute. Okay. See, rename. First, rename local objects. Rename local objects. Just a minute. Just a minute. Rename local objects. One at a, not only one, you can rename 4 or 5 objects in one navigation, in a navigation. Rename local objects. Next, rename shared objects. First, rename local objects. Tell me the navigation for rename local objects.
Resources.
Just a minute. Confused. First,
Resources.
resources.
Object repository.
Object
Repository.
repository.
And then right click on
Select
on the
object.
you want.
Select object. Next, select object and right click. Next, rename. Next, close. No need to save. It is local repository. Close object repository. Okay. If it is shared repository, rename shared objects. Resources, object repository. Continue.
Object resources.
Object repository
manager.
Manager. See, first I didn't see that. I didn't explain that navigation. Just a minute. Resources, object repository manager, file, open, browse path of the shared object repository file, click OK, file, enable editing, select object, suppose cancel button, rename, I want cancel button as clear button, save, close object repository manager. This is the navigation. Observe resources object repository manager. Next. File open required now.
Open file first.
File. Next step.
File enable editing.
File enable editing. Next last step.
And then select object, right click and rename.
Yes. Select object and right click, rename. Here save required. It is external file. Save. Next. Close object repository manager. Okay, this is about rename objects. We can rename local objects as well as shared objects. Next feature, delete objects. We can delete local as well as shared objects. See, first I want to delete agent name edit box from this local repository. Resources, object repository, select the agent name edit box, right click, delete, confirm deletion, close OR, no need to save. Next, I want to delete password edit box from shared object repository. Password from shared object repository. Guide me. I want to delete password edit box from this shared object repository.
Resources. Object repository manager. Open the file.
File. Open. Browse path of the file.
Edit. Enable editing. File.
Enable editing. Next. Select the object. Suppose you want to delete this password. Right click, delete, confirm deletion, and save. Close object repository manager. Okay, guide me. Tell me the navigation. First, delete objects. Delete local objects. First one, delete local objects.
Resources.
Just a minute. Second one, delete shared objects. Tell me, delete local objects.
Resources.
Resources. Object repository. Select object and right click.
And delete.
Here, just instead of rename, just use delete. Next, confirm deletion. Just OK. Confirm deletion. Next, close object repository. Next, navigation for deleting shared objects. Resources, object repository manager, file, open, browse.
Delete.
Next, continuation, file menu, enable editing. Next, selected object, right click, instead of rename, delete. Save common. Here just delete. Delete. Next, confirm deletion. Save, close object repository manager. See, this is about delete objects, delete shared objects. See, next D. Export, already we discussed this one. Export local objects. Just you guide me. Export local objects. Suppose I have one local repository. I want to make it as a shared object repository. Resources.
Object repository.
Object repository.
And add objects.
File. Export local objects. Next, browse path to store.
Browse path of.
Enter file name. Create. Close object repository. Simple. Tell me the navigation. Resources menu. Object
repository.
Object repository.
File. Add objects to local.
File. Next, export.
Export to local.
Export local objects to shared. Not, don't confuse. Export local objects. Next,
rename.
Browse path to store. Next, enter file name.
Save.
Create. Enough. Next, close object repository. Close object repository. Okay. Next, merge repositories. Suppose I have two repositories, small size repositories. For example, I want to make them as single repository using merge repositories feature. How to merge? Say it won't export duplicate objects. It will overwrite. Say observe the navigation. Resources menu. Object repository manager. Tools. Object repository merge tool. Here provide path of the first repository. Suppose login TSR. Next, browse path of the second repository. I'm telling first repository, second repository, but it is showing primary file, secondary file. Means it adds secondary file to primary file. If any duplicate objects are there, it will overwrite. Suppose same object with different names, that time it considers primary file names only. See, it adds secondary file to primary file. Click OK. See, it is showing statistics. Observe memory merge summary. Two unique objects added from primary file. Two unique object means that not available in secondary file. What are these two unique objects from primary file that not available in secondary file?
Primary file agent name available, secondary file agent name not available, and OK button.
Good. Next, one unique object added from secondary file. Password. Password. One object are identical in both files.
Okay.
Okay.
And here is monkey, that's the same thing.
Clear cancel also same na? See some
Yeah.
Summary incorrect, but here it is showing na clear red color.
Yes.
Okay, duplicate is there, monkey. It didn't store monkey. Clear also duplicate is there, cancel.
Yeah.
But
Cancel.
it is considering primary file object names na, names from primary file, first file.
Yes. Yes.
Next close. Next save. Suppose XYZ TSR, save. Close object repository manager. Close object repository merge tool. Close object repository manager. See, after merging also you will have source files. It doesn't move the source files. If you don't want source files, you can delete them. See, these are external files you can delete from hard disk. Just a minute. Know the navigation. Tell me the navigation for merge repositories, merge to repositories.
Resources, object repository manager.
Resources, object repository manager.
And then merge something option.
First, tools menu. Tools menu, merge repositories tool. Observe. Resources, object repository manager, tools, object repository merge tool. See. Object repository merge tool. Next, select browse.
And then browse for the
Browse,
and primary.
Browse path of the primary file. Next, secondary file one by one. After that, after browsing, see object repository merge tool. Click OK. It shows merge statistics. Close. See. Click OK. Next, close. Merge. Close statistics window. Statistics dialog box. Next.
Close repository.
Save.
Okay.
Save the repository. Next, close a repository merge tool. First this one in order to put base state. Next, close object repository manager. Okay na, complete navigation. Okay, next,
yes
before break I will explain one more option, one more operation in object repository, then we will take a 10 minutes break. Next one, associate shared object repositories, one or more. Associate shared object repositories. See, association is action level. See, I'm taking the new test. Observe. Open object repository, resources, object repository, blank. Next, resources, associate repositories. click add repository icon, browse path of the repository, suppose login, click open, associate with action, associate with action, click OK. Next, confirm whether that shared object repository associated or not. Resources, object repository. See, objects information populated. These are shared objects. Here, no export local objects, no enable editing. These are shared objects. Guide me how to associate shared repositories. We can associate one or more, multiple. Guide me.
Resources.
Resources. First, launch object repository. It is new test blank. Next, associate.
Resources.
Resources.
Associate repositories.
Associate repositories.
Add now add repositories.
Click plus symbol.
Sign.
Next, click on select or browse path of the repository. Next, associate with action, action level. Click OK. Next, confirm. See objects information loaded. Okay, now, and just a minute. UFT supports many to many mapping. Say, suppose in our test, two actions. Action 1, action 2. For these two actions, 3 repositories required. For first action, a repository 1 and a repository 2. For second action, a repository 2 and repository 3. Yes, you can associate. Finding this one, many to many. Suppose here multiple actions, here multiple repository files. For first action, repository 1, repository 2. For second action, repository 2 and repository 3. Here observe, repository 2 can be associated with 2 actions now.
Yes, yes.
See, many to many. Getting this one?
Yes.
Suppose in a test, multiple actions, multiple repositories. Yes. I will show a small example. Here observe. I'm taking the new test. I want another one more action. Design menu, call to new action, action 2. Okay. How many actions in this test? How many actions?
Two actions.
2 actions.
2 actions.
For okay. For these 2 actions, I want 3 object repository files. For first action, login TSR and ABCD TSR. For second action, ABCD TSR and XYZ TSR. How to associate? Guide me. For first action, first 2 repositories. For second action, second 2 repositories. Resources, associate repositories. Click, just a minute. Resources, associate repositories. Click, before that, launch object repository, blank. Here 2 actions. 2 actions blank. See, second action also blank. resources, associate repositories, click add repository icon. For first action, login TSR required and ABCD TSR also required. Okay, first add all repositories XYZ. Observe 2 actions, 3 repositories. For my first action, first 2 repositories. Select, just a minute. Select first repository, select first action, select second repository, first action. Next, second repository for second action also, third repository for second action only. Okay. Getting tools, resources, object repository. See action 1, action 2. Observe resources, associate repositories. First repository. See, observe this. Any confusion? Just a minute. Just a minute. Small confusion. New test. Just avoid the confusion. Rename. Repository 1. Just understanding purpose. Repository 2. You can use any names, no issue. Repository 3. It is showing this one. Oh. See. We have 3 repositories, repository 1, 2, 3, 2 actions. Resources, associate repositories. First browse all 3 repositories. Next, select first one. Oh. Just a minute. Small problem. In this only new test now, only one action. Action 2. One at a time. Observe. How many repositories?
3 repositories.
How many actions?
2 actions.
2 actions. Suppose I want first 2 repository for first action. Select first repository, action, add. Second repository, action 1, add. Next, second one I want for this action 2 also. Third one only for action 2. Now observe, first repository associated with only first action. Observe, right side. Second repository with 2 actions na, first and second. Select second one, action 1, action 2. Third one only with second action. Observe.
Second.
Third one only with second action. First one only with first action. Middle one action 2 with 2 actions. Getting? You have to support many to many support. Okay. Just last 2 minutes. First of all, why we need to associate repository? Associate repository is okay. Tell me the navigation. Navigation.
Resources.
Just a minute.
Associate repositories.
Just a minute. Navigation. Resources. Associate repositories. Next.
No, add.
Add icon, add sign,
Add repository.
Add.
Navigate.
Next.
Add repository. Browse.
Okay. Browse path of the repository. One or more. Next. Select action. Next, associate. See this is. See here my question is why? Why we need to associate? Why we need to associate shared repositories? Why we need to associate shared repositories? See, after the break, I will explain this one.